From Iniesta to Pedri, from Raul to the chip from Fernando Torres, from having midfielders like Xavi and Busquets to a teenager being the face of the nation, Spanish football is a story on its own. The thing about the Spanish is that they dominated international football with Tiki Taka. With a golden generation of players that were technically gifted and smart, Spain was able to beat the Germans, the Dutch, and the Italians. But now when the Spanish come to center stage, their team, from new players to a brand new playstyle, follows a very different pattern than the Tiki Taka era. While the new generation is different from the previous Spanish teams we have seen, they have the ingredients to succeed on the international stage again. Spain have some great players right now. Rodri is arguably the best player in the world, let alone the best midfielder. Pedri is the conductor in the middle of the pitch. Yamal, as a teenager, might already be the best right winger on the planet, and Nico Williams is phenomenal on the left wing. But speedy, skillful wingers were not the way that Spain used to dominate. In fact, even before the Tiki Taka era, Spain had a very different playstyle. Nicknamed La Furia Roja, which translates to the Red Fury, their play was much less about elegance and more about being physical and direct. Spain football used to be about getting the ball to its wingers, who would then attempt a bunch of crosses to the forwards. It was a direct approach that brought the team little success and even less admirers. With this style, Spain consistently underperformed on the international stage. They had just one European championship in a 4-team tournament in 1964, followed by a 44-year trophy drought. In the 1984 Euros, they made it to the final but lost to France. In the 1994 World Cup, Spain got all the way to the quarterfinals but lost 2-1 to Italy in a controversial match that saw Luis Enrique be elbowed in the face. In Euro 1996, Spain made it to the quarterfinals where they matched against England. Spain were the better team for much of the game and had a legitimate goal disallowed, but they ended up losing on pens. This series of disappointments continued all the way to the 2006 World Cup. After being eliminated, the manager, Luis Aragonés, decided something had to change. Spain was struggling in international tournaments and there was no way this team could ever win an international trophy if things stayed the same. Aragonés had noticed that the Spanish team was not physical or tough enough to be able to outmuscle opponents. They therefore decided to start concentrating on keeping the ball and thus started to employ the Tiki Taka, a style characterized by short passing and movement, working the ball through the various channels and maintaining possession. The style of football had its roots in the Schalke teams of the 1930s and 1940s. Its influence on Spanish football predominantly came through a batch of Dutch coaches led by Johan Cruyff, Louis van Gaal, and later Frank Rijkaard, who coached Barcelona and instilled the principles of total football at the club and its academy, La Masia. It also helped that Spain had a new golden generation of players, a crop of technically gifted and smart midfielders, many of whom had come from La Masia. Xavi, Iniesta, Fabregas were excellent in possession-based systems. They were smart players who were phenomenal on the ball. Xavi and Iniesta had been massively important in Barcelona's domestic success. The two La Masia graduates were only 5'7" tall, but their technique and understanding of space was flawless. They had an almost telepathic understanding between each other. With it, they would completely rewrite the possibilities for Spanish football. While Fabregas wasn't playing in Barcelona at this time, the La Masia DNA could be seen all over him. He could score and create, making him the perfect profile to play right behind the striker and in front of Xavi. On top of the La Masia graduates, there were a few other Spaniards who were essential to the 2008 Spain team. David Silva, David Villa, and Fernando Torres completed the squad. Silva and Villa were both in Valencia at this time. The two were massively important to Valencia winning the Copa del Rey. Fernando Torres was in England and in the conversation for the Ballon d'Or. He was the best player on Liverpool and one of the most complete strikers in the world. It really was a golden generation of players. With these new players and new tactics, there was hope for the Spanish national team. Spain qualified for Euro 2008 at the top of qualifying Group F. In the group stages, Spain won all of their games in Group D. In the quarterfinals, they got their revenge on Italy and beat them on penalties. In the semifinals, Spain had to play against Russia. Spain's plan was to make the first half as slow as possible, a 0-0 stalemate. But in the second half, Spain surprised Russia with a change of pace, where Xavi started the scoring. Xavi fed Iniesta, who then returned the ball to him with a perfect cross. Their telepathic connection was truly one of a kind. Goals from Dani Giza and Silva finished Russia off. In the finals, they went up against the masters of certainty, Germany. In the 33rd minute, Xavi picked out Torres with a wonderfully precise through ball. Torres wrestled Lahm out of the way and coolly chipped the ball over the advancing Jens Lehmann and into the net. It was, for 2 years, the most famous goal in the history of Spanish football. It ended up being the only goal of the match. 1-0 was not even a fair reflection of the dominance Spain had shown. They hit the post multiple times. They were completely all over the Germans. Xavi orchestrated everything in the middle of the park, with Spain constantly pulling the German players out of possession with their quick short passing. The German media called it death by 1,000 passes. The same crop of players stayed together for the 2010 World Cup. Spain actually lost the first match of the tournament against Switzerland. Maybe it was the wake-up call they needed, because after that, they ended up beating everybody on their path. If you thought David Villa was good in the 2008 Euros, he was even better in the World Cup, scoring 5 goals. One of his goals being the only goal of the game against Paraguay in the quarterfinals. Villa had bailed out Spain, helping them reach the last 4 of the World Cup for the first time since 1940. The next round, Spain also won 1-0 thanks to a headed goal from Puyol. It wasn't as dominant as their path to the 2008 Euros final, but Spain had made it to another international tournament final within 2 years. In what was an incredibly physical match that saw the highest total of cards ever in a World Cup Finals history, Spain pulled out another 1-0 masterclass. In the final 4 minutes of extra time, Fabregas passed the ball to Iniesta, who buried it home. Casillas won the Golden Glove, while Villa won the Bronze Ball and Silver Boot. Spain had gone from decades of being trophyless to becoming both European and world champions in the span of 2 years. Going into Euro 2012, the majority of the core players were still there, but there was no Puyol or David Villa. Fernando Torres was selected, but 2012 Torres was very different from the guy that we saw in 2008. Without their top scorer from 2010, and without really a proper number 9, there were doubts about whether Spain would be able to continue their glory. All those doubts, though, were put to rest. Spain ended up using Fabregas as a false 9 in the final against Italy, playing with 6 midfielders. They took the lead with a 14-minute goal from David Silva and never looked back. Took full control of the game and possession. With Alonso, Busquets, Xavi, David Silva, how are you expecting to ever get the ball? Torres also silenced his haters at the time, picking up 3 goals in the tournament, including 1 in the final. With 3 major tournament wins in a row, Spain had become the greatest international team ever. Since that 2012 European Championship though, Spain hadn't looked nearly as dominant. In 2014, they were grouped. In Euro 2016, they lost to Italy in the round of 16. World Cup 2018, they lost to Russia on pens. Spanish fans thought the national team took a turn for the better when they made it all the way to the semifinals in Euro 2020, but 2 years later, they lost to Morocco in the World Cup quarterfinals. It was obvious that the Tiki Taka era was over. Spain had been able to dominate from 2008 to 2012 because they had a golden generation of players. They literally had some of the best players in the world. I mean, one year, 2 of the 3 guys on the Ballon d'Or podium were Xavi and Iniesta. But since then, there was a lack of talent in the Spanish squad. They no longer had the best players, so Tiki Taka didn't work. They would keep possession, but nothing would come from it. Teams were more than happy to just watch them play in front of them, knowing that they were never going to create an actual attacking opportunity. But things are beginning to change. Spain is now developing some fantastic players. The rise of the new generation of talented Spaniards have allowed Spain to move away from the Tiki Taka era. They still have some very technical players, but they now also have speedy, skillful wingers that can run at defenders. Even in their prime, Spain didn't have these kind of wingers. I mean, when you look at it, most of Spain's wingers were just makeshift central midfielders, whether it was David Silva on the right, Iniesta on the left. These guys are nothing like your natural wingers. With Lamine Yamal and Nico Williams, Spain can play very quick, direct football. Yamal has been exceptional for both Barcelona and the Spanish national team. His decision-making and passing are like a player that has been playing for decades, not a teenager. He is able to create so many chances from the right wing slot. On the left, Nico Williams has the speed and a fantastic ability to change directions quickly. He cooks every wingback in front of him and has a rocket of a strike. Together, they create chances for fun and are a nightmare for fullbacks. Then you have Kubarsi, who is a rising star at center back, developing to have the same impact that the likes of Ramos, Piqué, and Puyol had on the national team. And of course, how can we forget Gavi, who is the engine of the midfield? Pedri, of course, looks like a regen of Iniesta from the Tiki Taka era. Elegant, intelligent, technically gifted, he is exactly what you expect when you think of a Spanish central midfielder. On top of the rising stars, you have established veterans like Rodri. I can't speak highly enough of Rodri. In that number 6/number 8 hybrid role, he gives you everything you need. He has the speed and strength to win the ball back, but he's also fantastic in possession and can get you a goal when you need it the most. With this new era of Spanish players, the fans will be cheering with their last breath. The Spanish fans are some of the most passionate fans in the world, and they want to support their team making history. The fans are coming out in numbers for their nation, and they should be cheering loudly. There's a lot of exciting things happening in Spanish football, and the national team has the ingredients to make some noise in the coming years. That 2008 year was so magical that I went on a deep dive to see what Spain did to change their team to end a 44-year trophy drought. If you love the Spanish national team and you want to see the dominance they showed in that tournament, you have to check out this video right here.